Hi, everyone. I'm Riley. I am the founder of Noetic Mental Performance, and I am here with head coach of Northern Arizona University women's soccer team, Coach Kylie Louw.
Hey
Um,
everyone.
Also former Olympian in the 2012 Olympics, right?
That's
So we're going
correct,
to be
yes.
talking about mental health as it relates to athletes in general, but more specifically collegiate athletes, as Kylie's had a lot of experience in this realm. So thanks for being here.
Thanks
And
for
I
having
guess
me.
I'll start off by asking, like, what is your overall perception of mental health right now in our society?
Well, I think mental health has always been something. I just think now we have the resources and the knowledge to actually address it. And obviously, it plays an integral role in any athlete's performance, but it is the defining factor for me between an average athlete compared to an elite athlete. And that could be on any level, doesn't necessarily mean Olympic or national team level. We're talking on any level. That is the defining factor for growth, for development, for performance,
Yeah,
in my opinion.
yeah.
So obviously massively important. And we realize now as coaches that it's not something that takes care of itself. We
Mhm.
definitely have to help our players and our teams grow in those areas. So that's why it's become so imperative in the collegiate area, but more so in the youth as well.
Yeah. So, how do you think mental health, especially with your athletes, has been impacted since COVID-19?
Well, I think there's in a lot of ways, right? I think a collegiate athlete definitely deals with a lot of pressures, social pressures, academic pressures, even, coach player pressures, disappointment, performing, making sure that they're making their family happy and reaching their goals. And
Mhm.
so that's number one. And then you start getting into, okay, well, what happens now if COVID is limiting their ability to do some of those things? A lot of players, put a lot into what they do, and they need mental health socially to help. So it's going out with friends or going hiking or just having some sort of release. And COVID has eliminated that release. So where do they get that release from? And that's where I think COVID has impacted athletes all over, right? And COVID has eliminated some people's dreams, playing in a championship, finishing their senior year off, being able to enjoy the reward of putting 4 hard years in. And I think all of those things are really tough for someone to navigate through, on top of still trying to train, still trying to get better, and then not being able to see family, knowing that some family members are at risk, some people even dealing with the virus and their family members dealing with the virus. It's we often don't think of the mental health side of that, regardless of those that have had to deal with the virus itself. Yes, there's the health part where we don't want our athletes to get sick, but we are dealing with so much on the back end of the mental health repercussions of COVID. So it's been a massive challenge, and I believe it's going to change college athletics forever, at least from the coaching perspective and how we deal with things and what we do. So it's
Mhm.
been major.
Yeah. No, I think you bring up a good point about how outside of COVID, there's already these pressures as an athlete, let alone a collegiate athlete, that they deal with expectations and family members and, the social aspect. And then you
Mm-hmm.
throw in this virus, right, that has completely just upturned your whole life, right? Something you've been working towards and preparing for. My heart goes out to all those seniors, whether you're competing at the college level or not. Like, I can't imagine being
Mm-hmm.
like, okay, well, now what? And
Yeah.
so for you with your players, obviously, your season has been postponed to the spring, correct?
Yes,
Um,
correct.
what are some things that you are doing as a coach to making sure that, whether it's your seniors or even your freshmen who are coming in, are staying focused and are just mentally healthy right now?
It's difficult, Riley. It's so difficult. There's no exact science, right? There's no playbook that goes, coaches, this is how you deal with it. So I think it's just having a relationship with your athletes and being able to have honest conversation. So my approach was, how can I give my athletes multiple sources or resources or outlets that they can use to express struggle, to express difficulty navigating life, you know? So yes, I can have a relationship with them, but we all know that athletes are probably not going to pour their hearts out to the head coach. So
Mhm.
we have a lot of resources in that way to offer them, saying, hey, if you don't feel comfortable talking to me, well, we've got 2 assistants, 3 assistants that do a great job of that. We have an athletic trainer who's been amazing. We have, you know, psychologists on staff, and we have, you know, head athletic trainers that we just all know we have to be there for these athletes right now, and we have to manage what we ask from them. So
Yeah.
but it's more about the individual connection, and I call it personalization,
Mhm.
because what one athlete is going through and the way that they are navigating COVID is way different than the next.
Yeah.
And so just assuming that everyone's having a hard time is not right, and just assuming that everyone is dealing with it okay is not right either. So obviously making sure that you really go in depth with these players to
Yeah.
find out the truth of what they're dealing with, how they're dealing with it. I will say I'm so proud of them. I've had calls late in the night. I've had calls early in the morning. You know, I've had texts in the middle of the night. You know, there's so many things that I'm just so proud of them being vulnerable about it,
Yeah.
because a lot of times athletes don't want to show weakness.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Mm.
And so that's been the biggest thing, and just allowing us to be open and honest. We've
Mhm.
introduced something called a circle chat, and we do that every Tuesday. And the topics vary from, you know, anything. It's not, we try and stay away from COVID actually.
Yeah.
But you hear how some of these impacts are really stifling some progression
Mhm.
in athletes, and
Yeah.
how we're going to take steps to get past that. So, you know, our topics have ranged a ton, and I really think that that's been helpful, that they can trust us with other topics, which means they can trust us with what they're dealing with COVID.
Yeah.
So just extreme being there for them is the key, but also making sure that you have multiple avenues for them to have people.
Mhm.
One avenue doesn't fit all, you know.
Yeah. No, that's awesome. I'm glad that you're implementing things like that because, like I said, I think that even, going beyond COVID, there's so many things that, we or coaches can do to make sure that their athletes are mentally healthy. And, for me as a former athlete, I would give anything to have, circle chats every Tuesday because it is important. And I think, it's this big stigma that, we can't talk about it, right? Like we're just supposed to be tough and
Mm-hmm.
that's not always the case. And so my next question is, do you think that females are impacted differently than males and how so? And the reason why I ask that is because I actually read this study that the NCAA put out that 1 in 4 athletes experiences some type of depressive symptoms, which I thought was crazy. And soccer, next to track and field, was one of the highest sports that experiences these symptoms. So, your
Well,
thoughts on gender?
yeah, in my experience, Riley, obviously I don't have the research in front of me, so I'm just talking from my experience and not from maybe what is the truth.
Mhm.
But from my experience, I feel like females are very emotional beings. They're sensitive, they're empathetic, you know, so they may not be dealing with something individually, but they care so much about their teammate and maybe that teammate's mom and that teammate's uncle. And you know, so then you take on all of this responsibility emotionally, physically, mentally, and that's where I think it maybe impacts females a little bit more. Now, are there males that do the same thing? Of course, but
Mhm.
generally males are really focused on themselves and how do I deal with myself. In my opinion, our team is so, I think they're just great human beings, and they just care so much for each other that it's actually been a detriment to our program a little bit during COVID, because they're taking on anxiety from each other.
Mhm.
So I would say that is definitely a fact. I would also say that soccer does not surprise me, because I think we're one of the biggest female sports where you have that many females together. talking, and you know how it goes. They talk about all this stuff, right? They're so open to talk about all this stuff, and because we're empathetic beings and sympathetic, we go, yeah, I know, oh man, this is really tough. And we want to sympathize and empathize, but we don't often give solutions. Whereas I feel like for a male, it's much easier to go, man, just come on, just, you've got this. So it's soon going to end. We're good. But females we want to just allow emotion out, and we want to allow that conversation. And I think it's all great things, and it helps females. But it doesn't surprise me that soccer is someone that deals with it the most, because in soccer there is so much. It's a really popular female sport, number one. But I think just the sheer numbers of females together dealing with the same thing, and just the physicality and the physical requirements it takes to play soccer is tough. Soccer is not an easy thing where if I go A, B, and C equals D, that's not the case. Sometimes if you're doing other sports, maybe a simple, if you get in football, if you get that run right, then you're good. You just have to be athletic enough to do that. It's not as simple as that, I'm sure, but I do think just soccer is such a complicated thing that now you add some more complication. And remember, like, your mental capacity is full at the beginning of the day. Now you have training that's taking that away. You have COVID, you have family, you have your friends' COVID experiences, you have your friend being upset, you have your friend. What else do you have to give to yourself? Exactly. You've got nothing left. And it doesn't surprise me, and I am seeing that for sure, that it's tough to get through in terms of dealing with the pressures that we are currently facing.
For sure. No, and so obviously COVID has affected the recruiting process for many athletes, right? And so, I work with a lot of youth athletes where outside of COVID, that's their biggest stressor right now, right? How am I going to get recruited when the coach, can't come see me, or there's this restriction and the dead period is pushed clear back to this date? And so what advice from a college standpoint, whether it's soccer or any other sport, would you give to a young athlete who is really stressed and worried about that right now?
Well, I think the most important thing, Riley, is that recruits, or anyone that wants to be recruited, needs to understand that it's not only about athletic ability. And obviously us not being able to come and watch, that's just one piece of the recruiting process.
Yeah.
Of course, it's an important piece, and that's what's maybe going to ignite the recruiting process for a player. But it is such an opportunity for recruits to grow in so many other ways without the pressure of performing week in and week out while coaches are watching you. I think that's something that us as coaches are also realizing a little bit more, is maybe emphasizing more than just the playing part. Of course, is that 80% of the pie? Yes. But can you be influential with that other 20%, or however you break your pie up, to be unique, to add value to a program? Coaches are always looking for players to add value, whether that be on the field or not, right? And I think that's a part that recruits are missing right now. They're going, well, coaches can't watch me, so I'm not going to get recruited. It should actually be flipped and go, man, what an opportunity to sell myself, to sell my attributes, to sell my character, because character is the defining factor. You can have all the athletic ability in the world, but if you don't have the right character or attitude, you're not going to get where you want to go. If you don't have all the athletic ability in the world and you do have the character and attitude, you're going to get further than you thought you were going to go. So do you see how that adds up? Is like, that's not the be all and end all, and your time will come. That time will come. And it's not, I think recruits are going, oh, woe is me. Well, guess what? All the recruits are going through the same thing. Coaches are going through the same thing. So I really do think, yes, it's going to be a little different. It's not going to be the same. And yes, are there going to be one or two people that miss out on an opportunity that maybe they could have had or would have had? But coaches are always going to look for players. Always. Just because we can't watch you right now doesn't mean that coaches don't need players. Coaches need players. And so I think the important thing is doing the work on your end. I think a lot of times recruits go, well, if I play in this event, then that equals recruitment. When in fact, it's the complete opposite. It's you get yourself recruited, and being on the field is just to showcase that and to back up what you've already said, and to back up your character and to back up your attitude and to back up your ability. So it's such an opportunity. You know, I think I will advise, obviously film and video and those things are hugely important right now, because we as coaches do get 500 emails a day and they all look the same. So how am I going to pay attention to you over someone else? So film is that bit of factor there. So, you know, trying to get hold of some, even if it's individual technical work, or if it's, hey, this is what my beep test score was, or, you know, get creative to know what it means to be a good soccer player, regardless of just skill. And so there's so much opportunity for recruits. And that's what I would say is think outside the box a little bit and get yourself recruited during this time. You know, coaches, what else do they have to do all day than be on their computer right now? So they're looking, they're watching, they're asking. Get your club coaches to call, you send video, you get on the radar. And so I think it's a unique opportunity right now to maybe build relationships with coaches that you didn't think you would. Because we always just rely on our ability, right?
No, I think that that's awesome. And I think there's so much to be said about the creative piece. And for me personally, I think that these players, whether they're in college or being recruited, have an opportunity, like you said, to develop growth and that resilience that people who didn't have to go through COVID as an athlete never will be able to say that we had, right? And that's how to grind through hard times, but mentally get through it, right? Like, how do I train just to train when I have no games inside or competition, or, you know, can't go get seen by a college coach? Then what, you know? And I think that, like you said, that's only going to set them farther apart, and you're going to see the players that are really, you know, want it versus
invested. Yes,
exactly. So
it shows coaches so much, you know, in the recruiting process. There's going to be players that got better after COVID break and those that got worse. And I think that's just where the mentality has to be. What an opportunity to grow from a mentality standpoint without anybody watching you in that process. You can make so many mistakes right now and no one's watching you. And I think that's the best part, is like, there's no pressure right now. There really isn't. The only pressure is you putting that on yourself, you know? So I think that's an important thing to rationalize as well, as going, such an opportunity to really take time to, I can grow so much if I truly want it. And you will figure out really quick if you want it, because no one's telling you you have to do this. It's not you know, you can't get recruited right now through watching us, coaches watching you play. So if you truly want it, what are you going to grow in during this time? If you can't get outside, you've been on lockdown maybe, well, what are you doing to grow your game? Are you watching games? Are you analyzing? Are you growing your IQ? Are you, like, what are you doing to grow as a player? What mentality are you building on to get through this?
And then, you know, on the other end of that, you know, doing stuff outside of, you know, what is already asked of you, I think also, you know, I want to talk about the topic of self-care, which I think is really important for athletes who are putting in all this work. And often, you know, that's really misunderstood, or it's not talked about because we, you know, are go, 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 right? It's training, it's practice, it's games, it's, you know, you don't have a break. And so I think, you know, for myself as a mental performance coach, something that I emphasize is, I know you love your sport, but who are you outside of soccer, outside of basketball? And especially now, I think it's even more important that you develop that. So like, what are your thoughts on, you know, self-identity outside the sport and self-care along with that?
It's key, Riley, because a lot of people have the misconception that if they're unhappy, it's because of soccer. And if anybody has done their job right, the cause is never soccer. It's just not. The cause of unhappiness is maybe that I'm not putting in enough work, therefore I'm not performing. And you see how that goes back to the individual? It has nothing to do because of the game that you're unhappy. It's all actions or the lack of action that results in some of that unhappiness. And a lot of the time when you ask players what makes them happy, number one, they can't answer it, which is a topic on its own. But number two, when they do, it's usually friends, social life, hiking, biking, cooking, all those sort of things. And a coach cannot help you with that. A coach cannot help you. Maybe they can help you identify that, but they cannot help you actively take care of those things.
Exactly.
And so self-care is just the same commitment you have in wanting to perform should be the same commitment you have in taking care of yourself and your needs, and identify what is it that makes me want to work hard at practice.
Exactly. Yeah.
Is it the want to perform or is it not? Then maybe I don't want to perform, right? So self-care is such a loaded question because it's, number one, identifying what is it that truly makes players happy.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of people cannot tell you to this day. A lot of people can't. And I think that's the biggest thing, is identifying what and how to take care of self-care. We talk, and everybody knows they need to, but what is that? And that's such a difficult thing, which is great that you're starting at a young age, Riley, because people aren't asked to do that. Their identity is a good soccer player. Well, what happens when you go to college and you no longer are the best?
Exactly.
That happens 90% of the time.
Yeah, and I think that that's really where, you start to see athletes develop some of those depressive symptoms or anxiety because, oh my gosh, what am I doing if I'm not performing well? You still, and I tell my players this all the time, you still have to be able to go to class and, do all these other things. And so, yes, your sport is important, but who you are outside your sport is just equally as important. And
it's everything, Riley, that what you just said, because if you focus too much on your performance, well, now you've neglected everything else, and then when that starts crashing down, now you feel helpless. And I think that's the key there, is like you have to take care of other things because you can't have it all suck at once.
Definitely. Yeah, no, for sure. But I think that even self-care, especially among coaches right now, is probably really important for you who experiences all this pressure. How do I keep my athletes motivated? How do I make sure they're mentally okay? How do I prepare for this season that we're about to have, So what do you do as a coach to practice self-care? I'd love to hear.
Us as coaches are actually very hypocritical people, Riley, because we know what we're telling our athletes to do. We know what needs to be done, yet we as coaches don't do it. And I guarantee you, there's not one coach in the whole world that is actually taking care of themselves right now. Because the thing about being a coach is you do this because you put other people in front of you. You care more about your athlete's well-being than you do your own. And so some of our self-care is actually taking care of other people's self-care, even though we can't really, but we can guide and coach and mentor that. And I think that's been helpful, is just helping some of our players identify those things. And that's been some self-care for me. Now, sometimes it backfires, right? So you can give everything as a coach, and then the athlete still doesn't get where they want to be or you want them to be, and then you feel like, oh, that didn't work, and why didn't it work? Like, did I do something wrong? Did I not give them everything they needed? So I think it's a loaded question, but because coaches don't take time off, even if they go on vacation, Riley, guess what they're thinking of? Their team, how they're doing, all those things. So I think it's really important to be able to do things that take your mind off of it as a coach. So definitely a hobby, getting into some mountain biking, or getting involved at a gym or something, because that's an hour or two out of your day that you're not thinking about your team. And it has to be something active, because if it's not, now you're in a position where you're constantly thinking about it. Even if you're watching TV, you're constantly thinking about it. So I think we're just hypocritical, and we need to do a better job, but we don't. And I haven't, and I need to do a better job of it. But it's just so hard to dismiss these 30 athletes while I go, oh man, I've had such a rough day. You just kind of push through and face the next day for what it is. So
it's not easy, for sure. So
nope.
So to conclude, what is the one thing you're looking forward to, whether that's in 2021 with the season or just right now? I think I hear a lot of like, what is there to look forward to right now, and I think that's kind of part of the problem is, a lot of us feel stuck with COVID, whether we're physically stuck inside or mentally just stuck because, we're not able to take those next steps. So what are you looking forward to the most right now?
I think for me, the most is just to be able to play, because we're doing all of this so that we can play, right? We can enjoy being competitive and competing for something. And that's the key right there. Until we're going to be able to play, I think it's going to be a challenge, because even if it is a bit sticky about like protocols that we have to follow and things that we have to do with COVID, well, guess what? At least we're getting to play. And at that point, I think that's when all of this feels like it was worth it. But until then, we don't know. We don't know if it's going to feel worth it. So that's what I'm looking for. Just to being able to see our players 11v11 on the field against another opponent where they feel like, man, I got through so much and here I am. I got to play today.
Yeah.
And it may not be a championship game, but that very first game, they're going to go, oh, I really do love this game.
Mm-hmm.
But right now, they don't love this game because they
Yeah.
have to do so much to,
Yeah.
and then they don't see the reward of that yet. So
Mm-hmm.
I think I'm looking forward to that, being
Yeah.
able to compete and against someone else than ourselves.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. No, and I think that everyone is probably in that same situation. So,
For sure.
well, thank you for sharing and
Of
being here with
course.
me. I appreciate it,
Of
and for
course.
answering all these questions. And, again, this is a topic that I feel like is not talked about enough. And
Yeah.
it's especially important right now with COVID and everything that, athletes, parents, coaches are going through. And so I really just wanted to, bring awareness from a coach's perspective about, different things that we can do to help, combat
Of
mental health
course.
and also just, keep moving forward. So good luck. You're doing great.
Yeah. And let
And
me just say this. Thank you, Riley. And I'm really proud of you that you're doing stuff like this,
oh, thank
because
you.
obviously I know you from a coach, and I coached you for a year or so. And I think, you were nodding to a lot of stuff that I was saying. And that's because from a mental health and a mentality standpoint, I mean, there really is no one better than you to
Oh,
run stuff
I
like this. So
appreciate it.
I am really proud of you,
Oh,
and
thank you.
really you're giving this company that you're running, I think is imperative for young athletes, and you've seen a need, and for someone that's been through it and actually dealt with it in such a positive way, and doing what you're doing now is such a testament to these youngsters. So proud of you,
Oh,
Riley.
thank
Good
you,
job.
Kylie. It means a lot. No, I appreciate
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.